Okay, I think we're going to roll.
All right.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have the pleasure of convening the January 27th meeting of the Mashpee Board of Sewer Commissioners. We're in the Waquoit Meeting Room at Mashpee Town Hall, and today we have with us in person, we have our town engineer, Chris Gallagher. We have Susan Donovan, who is taking care of our meeting notes. Me, Ann Malone, and bringing up the rhythm section, we have Al Toll on bass, and Dancing Kenny Dunn on drums. We got a lot to cover this meeting. First, let's do our Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I don't see any members of the public, although, here comes our esteemed leader of the Board of Health, who's sitting in on a very interesting meeting. Since we have no public audience, we will jump right to our first agenda item.
Hey, Mike?
Yes.
Meredith? Is Meredith connected?
Meredith is here too.
I'm sorry, Meredith Harris is calling in via Zoom. And we were thinking that Joe Lyons would call in, but we haven't seen him yet.
I don't know if
Okay.
she's hearing us.
Meredith, can you hear us?
Can we hear her?
Meredith, can you hear us? Uh-oh.
As long as she's not talking.
Well, I don't know what to do about that.
Where's Ken? Is he still here?
Is the volume all the way up? Well, it'd be her volume too.
Can you hear us, Meredith? No, she can't hear us. Thanks, Ann.
Oh, I don't know. Don't thank me.
Oh. Anastasia, do you know how to fix this problem?
It said she was connecting to audio.
The volume is
and then
up.
it X'd out, so I don't know.
Our volume is up, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
The volume there.
Would you mind running and getting the AV guy?
Could be on her end that she's not got the audio on.
Should write on a piece of paper, do you have your volume on?
It said no audio, and then it X.
But you have to write it backwards, otherwise it's...
All right.
Oh, she disappeared.
Do you remember the town meetings, they kept holding that up and the number was always backwards?
The audio is going out.
Okay, so our sound is going out.
Where'd she go?
Where'd she go? Here.
Maybe she's retrying.
Okay, I'll be prepared with the question in case she comes back. Okay, since there's nobody here from the public, let's jump to GHD discussion of Amendment 4, which all of you should have in front of you. And this is going back a ways. This is something that we should have signed a while ago. GHD has actually done most of the things that are in Amendment 4 already. So we as a commission need to vote it forward, and then it will be signed by Rodney Collins, and we'll be able to pay GHD for their work. So part of it was the installation of 5 groundwater wells, which we've talked about ad nauseum. They're going to do a quick water table map and compare it to topographic elevations so that we can demonstrate to DEP that there is space between the bottom of the quote wetland and the top of the water table, which is going to allow us.
She's back, I don't know if you can hear her.
Oh, there she is.
She won't be able to read that.
No,
Maybe she can read it backward.
No, we can't hear her at all.
We can't hear her. I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, so you can
It's
check.
not on her end, she's got muted.
She's got the chat up.
No, I put it up.
Oh, okay. Can you hear us?
Hang on.
Nod. Can you hear us?
But that's Al, right? Who typed that?
I did.
I did.
Oh, you
I
typed it.
typed it.
Okay, Mark typed it, so we're asking her, can she hear us? But she probably isn't looking at the chat.
Yeah.
Is that chat for us to see or for even people zooming to see?
Anybody who's watching can see it.
If she looks at it,
Yeah.
you have to know to look at it in your tray. I think we better just
I
plow
think we
on.
got to plot on.
Yeah.
Okay. So I
You
guess,
know her cell phone? We could literally call her.
I don't know that I have it with me.
okay, so what I'm asking is for the commission to vote to send this to town manager for signature, which I think is purely justified because they've done all the work almost already. And it was my fault for not getting this forward sooner. So do I hear a motion to move this forward?
You know, if the work is already done,
Hey, it's actually
they probably should be paid. So I
Can you
would
hear
move
us
that we
at all?
pay 'em.
Okay,
second.
second.
You mean you don't have a number, or you don't have a number to dial, or?
I don't think there was a dial-in number.
I can hear her a little bit.
Okay.
I think you hear an awful.
What's,
What is
what's
it,
the
Glenn?
number? Hold on a second.
1449.
All right,
539-1449.
Dial right into that conference phone.
okay. Meredith, try dialing into this number. 508-539-1449. Yes, because that is the
Conference line's on.
conference phone
Okay.
here in the walkway room. We're going to see if that will work. Okay, bye. I know, and now the viewers are saying, and they're building a wastewater treatment.
All right, we have a motion to, and seconded to move forward on approving this
Okay, you need a
amendment
second?
for.
I
Now, we got a second, so
Okay.
let's vote.
All in favor?
Al?
Did you want a
Ken,
discussion first?
Any discussion? Okay. What's your vote?
Okay, I can hear.
Yay.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Glenn.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Thank you.
Ken, what's your vote?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes,
Yes. Okay. So we will forward this, I guess Chris will forward this to Rodney for signature, and then GHD will get paid. GHD, would you mind telling us what GHD stands for?
It's named after 3 people.
You don't know their,
Yeah.
You don't know the name? Oh, my
Sorry.
goodness, you don't even know the name of your own firm.
You have to kill you.
I have forgotten. I honestly have forgotten. Yeah.
Okay. So today, GHD is going to, Mark and Anastasia are going to discuss the questions that we put together a while ago dealing with plant adjustments for Phase 2. These were questions that were drawn up to help us understand better what might have to be done to send Phase 2 flows to the existing plant. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to GHD.
So I'm going to do most of the presentation. I'm Mark Drainville. My background is wastewater treatment, so I'm going to handle most of this presentation today. I'm going to address the questions out of order, and hopefully you'll see why as we go through the presentation. So, let's see, share screen. There we go. All right. So these are three big picture topics that we're going to cover today. One of them is the reclaimed water question. The second big picture topic is residual disposal, that primarily wastewater sludge. And then the last topic is how does it fit on the site, although I am going to address those a little bit as we go through the presentation. So I just want everybody to please understand that these are big picture issues we're going to talk about. I am going to present costs, but I would ask that you don't make decisions based on the costs I'm presenting today, okay? They are kind of done in a vacuum when we usually don't do things in a vacuum, but this was done in a vacuum for the purposes of spurring discussion and providing some basic information. So first, reclaimed water analysis. So reclaimed water has to be treated to a higher level. So reclaimed water is water that might end up in contact with people. So you know, if you have it on a golf course watering or something like that, you have to treat it to a higher level than what's required to discharge to, for example, the ground.
Mark, can I interrupt just for those who are viewing on TV? We asked GHD to look into this because there's a strong possibility that we may treat to a Class A standard some portion of the wastewater we collect and send it to Willow Bend Golf Course for spray irrigation on fields, thus the need for Class A water.
So what I have on here, and I'm happy to go into detail, I might skip through some of these things and deal with this in a big picture, but please interrupt me if you'd like more information. So the very top of this slide gives the reference in Mass General Law that defines defines the water reuse standards. And the bottom portion of the different requirements, these are all treatment requirements. And if you allow me to just flip to the next slide, I can speak to them in groups here. So at the very top there, the pH of the wastewater, these are all, measurements or of the quality of the water. So the pH at the top is something that can be addressed by the existing water resource recovery facility. You can meet those standards with what you're going to have at the site. The next 4 categories there, BOD, TSS, turbidity, and total nitrogen. Those are all contaminant levels that can be addressed with a membrane bioreactor, which is the treatment process that is part of the upgrade. The only qualification that I would make to that is that we're currently not demanding that the manufacturer meet these requirements, but they have indicated that they can achieve this. And the difference there is that it's possible to achieve that with that technology. So if in the future you wanted to meet it with an upgrade, you would be able to with a membrane bioreactor with the same technology. The next item is disinfection, and it's a contaminant level that is addressed by a treatment process called disinfection. This is the biggest issue with water reuse at the water resource recovery facility. This is a significantly greater treatment level than you are currently tasked with achieving. Okay, so this would be the biggest difference, is the disinfection level.
What do you expect from our when we initially build the plant? What do you have for coliform counts?
So 200 per 100 milliliters,
Okay.
and you have to get down to almost non-detect.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Now, you mentioned different UV system.
So it's not necessarily, that's not quite correct. It's it's actually it's the same, like, kind of, same manufacturer, but it's just more of it. Okay, so I have some layouts I can show you, so I could show you the difference. So it's the same type of system, but just, it's a bigger system.
So
It's
you're
more-
saying UV will take care of the fecal coliform to 100.
Correct.
Now, is this testing done on-site, or is this testing done at location where you're discharging?
This is done at the treatment facility.
So it doesn't matter what happens by the time it gets down the golf course?
Well, the last step in this is to review this with DEP.
Okay. So
Okay.
they're not going to require you to put an oxidant in there?
So-
It'll have some effect, at least for the time the water's in the pipe down to discharge point.
So I haven't, so that's not something I have seen. I will say that UV disinfection doesn't kill, it inactivates. And you can get a reactivation of what is inactivated if it's exposed to sunlight. So if it's not exposed to sunlight, then the chances are it'll stay inactivated. But that last step there, it has to be reviewed, the whole thing would have to be reviewed with the state, okay? So,
I would agree, yeah.
all right.
Yeah, because UV just works on what goes by it. If it doesn't go by it, and it doesn't get in contact, it's not going to have any good effect on it.
So the UV system is designed, it's bulbs, right? It's like, kind of like fluorescent bulbs, if you want to have a picture in your mind. And it is designed so that the water column that passes by it is a certain distance that it's effective at. So you have enough UV bulbs that you're impacting the column of water that's passing by it. So it should be, this should work. I mean, this would work, so. So just as a summary, the impacts to the treatment facility are the MBR, the membrane bioreactor, would need the manufacturer to certify that they could meet those parameters that are in Mass General Law. The UV system would actually triple in size, so that's the impact. And then we'd have to review it with DEP. So these are some big picture things. You have a question, Mike?
No.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through what kind of an impact this would have. So what I did to try and illustrate this is use as an example what you are going to have there, and I'll talk about it in terms of flow. So this is the ultraviolet disinfection room in one of the buildings that is part of the treatment facility. So it's just a single room in the larger building that's primarily focused on the membrane bioreactor. Okay. What happens in here is the water passes through a pipe, and then it ends up in an open channel. And then these two, sorry, shoot. How do I go back?
Just go down.
Previous, sorry. These two gray boxes that I'm on, those are ultraviolet disinfection modules that contain approximately 40 bulbs in each module. And so you have a total of, say, 80 bulbs, and that is designed to at least do stage 1 and probably into stage 2 and maybe even a little bit more. And then to go to stage 3 and 4, you'd need one more module there, okay? So this is what would happen in order to treat the same amount of flow, so stage 4 flow, but to water reuse standards. You'd end up having to put another channel in, and you'd have a total of, instead of 3 modules, you'd have a total of 8.
Mark, if we were to decide after we had the plant up and running, and after we had started to gain flow, is there a point at which we're quite sure we're going to be able to discharge stages 1 through 4 at the existing site? if we start to bring in more water, is there a way to separate the water we would send to Willow Bend, treated to Class A standards, from not having to treat and not having the expense of electricity for the first 0.48 million?
You can. This is, so there's many ways it can be done. I'm going to talk about one way, okay? So if I go backwards here, so this is the building that is currently designed. You have a room. If in the future you're going to double the flow that was originally planned for the site, so go beyond stage 4, let's call it, I don't know if you're calling it stage 8, but if you go out that far, you can have a parallel connected facility that would treat to a higher level. So you could have, half your flow going through here and another portion going through a parallel UV system. There's other things to think about here. And who pays for it is another question too. But how's it stored? How do you convey it there? So those are other issues too. But you can separate it. You don't. The cost of treating it is also going to go up. Okay, so you probably want to separate it rather than triple your cost of treatment when you don't need to.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And I will say this, that if you have a portion of the facility that is devoted to achieving that high level, you can always turn it down and not use that extra energy when you don't need it. So if it was only a seasonal thing, you could do that.
Okay.
Okay. There's a cost of having equipment sitting there and not being used, though. That, you'd have to keep that in mind too. That's an investment that, But if you need to do it to dispose of wastewater, then that's the cost of disposing of wastewater, right? So, although it's, and I said triple the size, I'm going to tell you how I came at triple, even though it doesn't look like it. You have to have a redundant module in each channel. This is your last line of defense for disinfection. So the state requires that one of these units is just purely redundant. So it's not needed for treatment. It's there in case you need it. Okay. So the last one is a redundant unit. So you're left with 6 modules when in reality you only need 2 to treat that flow for the 200 per 100 milliliter, which is the standard limit. Does that make sense? So UV system would need to triple in size, but the space requirements are really only about double or a little bit more than double. Okay. And that's just based on the room size. I didn't really focus on that here, but there's some of the equipment you'd be able to still use. There's lifting devices that you can use for both. So you don't really need triple the space, but it's about maybe a little bit more than double the space that you would need. And this is just for the purpose of, again, big picture costs. A standard system, that room and the accessories, you're looking at maybe 1.3 million versus 3 million for the water reuse piece, water reuse layout. So again, this is like the room and the accessories, the UV system. So
It's a one-time capital cost?
this is just the capital cost, correct? Yep. Your power costs presumably would triple for that unit, for the operation of that unit, okay? But with what you're proposing to do, I think it's only during the summer months that you would do it, so, it would triple when you need to use it, right? In the off-season, it wouldn't, so, it would be some composite of that.
And is maintenance on this kind of technology pretty expensive?
The primary maintenance is the bulbs and the replacement of the bulbs. I mean, they're more sophisticated, but, you know, they're bulbs like the bulbs in here. They need to be replaced approximately once a year. The bulbs need to be cleaned so that you have wastewater, relatively clean wastewater, but still it's wastewater with particles in it, and they end up getting foul. Yeah, the bulbs get fouled with the wastewater passing by it. They have to be cleaned. So it's primarily the primary cost. The routine maintenance primary cost is the bulb replacement, which is probably once a year.
Mark, this is just a thought. What would happen if we left the existing system exactly the way it is and put a cleaning system like you're suggesting at Willow Bend? And that way, you'd only ever treat the water that went out there, and you wouldn't have to worry about treating everything else. I don't know, is that cost-wise make any sense, or?
You might, I mean, probably. That would be, you know, private property. Would the town still operate it? I don't know if that would still be your system. I guess you could get an easement if it still remains to be your system.
We can work all that out.
Yeah, right,
Yeah, the
right. So,
question is really the feasibility.
yeah.
Good question.
Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can just
Very
see
interesting.
someone switching the wrong switches, and all of a sudden you're sending out the lower treated water to Willow Bend. And then we got a problem. But if it's at Willow Bend and that's only treated there, then you have one class of water going one way and one class of water going the other.
Interesting.
I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
I think it's a good idea. I mean, that's your final flush right there is the UV.
Right.
So I
It
mean, you
is.
could divert it. And just have a valve that would, I mean, you'd have to have a way to control the flow. You just have to have a meter on it. But you could just switch it and have one go one way, and you could take as much or as little as you wanted.
Is this the kind of thing, Chris, that you think could fit in their existing treatment plant enclosure?
Well, I mean, if you're piping it all the way down there, you could do it right at the site 4. And you could control what goes back there. As long as it's in the line.
Okay.
But I mean, you could have it right at the plant and have whoever the plant operator controls what they need.
Interesting.
Now, Mark, this is a cleaner option, but what about other options? Have you looked at other options? Is there anything else available?
I'm sorry, did you say this is a cleaner? Cleaner? Is that
Well,
what you said?
it's simpler because it's same as what we're using already. Sorry. But is there other options available that we could use for taking care of this without spending a lot of money on UV?
So I would say that this is by far the most common technology. We've looked at other types of disinfection. What happens when you use something that's not as common is it's, you know, sometimes it's difficult to get material costs and materials. I'm trying to think of, don't quote me on this, but there's a chemical that can be used for disinfection. I'm not sure if it's hydrogen peroxide. Don't quote me on that one, but there is something that's kind of in use sparsely that could be used for disinfection, but when we've explored that, there was a concern that you might not be able to get the product when you needed it. The other most common type of disinfection is chlorine, which is, frankly, it's kind of fallen out of favor of late. UV disinfection is the one that's mostly used at this point, so. With chlorine, you'd have to put in a big tank. You have to have large detention times to have the chlorine react, and then you have to dechlorinate. And it's not. I don't think there's any longer on the Cape, especially for groundwater discharges. I don't know of any that for groundwater discharges. So there are options. They're just not as common. So. Any other questions on water reuse?
Mark, what about organics, volatile organics? Is that the kind of thing that would be removed at our plant with the technology you're talking about? Like even the PFAS?
So, no, not, well, yes and no. I mean, you do get a removal of, PFAS falls under a category of contaminants of emerging concern, and there are millions in that category, millions of contaminants in that category. You do have a reduction of those in the treatment facility. They don't achieve levels that the state has set for discharges to sensitive aquifers like zone 2s, for example. You'll drop the levels, but you won't get as far as you need to. You have to do an additional treatment step.
And are we planning on doing that?
You are not, that's not in your permit. You do not have to do that.
If we were to deliver water to Willow Bend, Class A water, was that something
That's-
DEP might require?
That's not in the regs right now. So we'd have to talk to them, but it's not in the regs.
Okay.
So the category that I think that you're thinking about is total organic carbon. That is a category that is a contaminant that the state monitors for discharges to zone 2, to drinking water aquifers. And that is not something that you're subject to at this point. So we'll talk about residual disposal. So there's a couple of items in here. Grit and screenings is one. So grit and screenings, those are, for grit, that is things like sand, that is, and fine materials, inert materials that are in the wastewater. And then screenings are things like rags and wipes and things that people throw down the drain. And so these are all things that we like to take out ahead of the downstream sensitive processes in a wastewater treatment facility. So they're taken out by, screenings are taken out by something called a screen. It's kind of what you can imagine. The wastewater passes through a screen, and the rags and stuff get trapped on that, and they get taken out. The grit, which again is like sand, is taken out through a grit removal system, which uses, there's different types of mechanisms that are used, but sometimes it's just the sheer weight of this material that settles it out, and it's then just removed from the waste stream. Most facilities will take this material, bag it, and put it in with solid waste and have it removed that way through solid waste. Okay. I think a lot of the smaller facilities have been able to just manage it in that way. Sludge disposal is a bigger issue. The current plan is that the sludge would be stored in a tank in liquid form, and it would be hauled off-site in a tanker truck. The reason for that is because back when the design had started and the end of the planning process, there wasn't a good feeling that things might progress beyond stage 2. It's recognized that it's a shame to haul water, but you also don't want to spend $1 to save 10 cents. And that's kind of what, if you don't produce enough volume of sludge, there's a point where it's not worth it to, you're too far away from it being cost effective. And so it's a lot more simple to just haul it in liquid form. A lot of very small facilities just handle it that way.
At what point, based on what you know about what we're proposing, at what point do you think we should be looking into our own sludge handling facility?
So what I would say to that is, even though I'm going to give you some costs here, I would say, given what your current plans are, you should think about putting in a sludge treatment facility. your size is jumping from a very, very small flow to something that's, more typical, honestly, for the Cape, something that's going to be like Provincetown, Chatham, Falmouth, all of which have a means of processing and thickening their sludge. So, and I will say that it's not, you've jumped into that arena where I would say it may or may not be technically cost effective, but there are other factors to bring in and think about. I've worked at some facilities where they've had issues with their sludge thickening equipment, and they have to haul in liquid form, and they can't get enough trucks to come and haul their liquid sludge because it's too much. If you just need one truck and you say to the guy, hey, I need you sometime this week, you'll get them sometime this week. If you call up and say, I have an emergency, I need 10 trucks to come down here, and that's going to be a little bit different. So you're heading into an arena where it's much better to start thinking about investing in sludge thickening or dewatering equipment.
Can you talk to the group about the difference between those two, thickening and dewatering?
So the liquid sludge, I'll start with that. The liquid sludge that you currently will have, there's sludge that's generated as part of the biological treatment process. That is almost exactly water. It has solids in it, but it looks just like water. A thickening process will approximately reduce the water volume by, you'll have about 1/6 of the volume. So it's a pretty significant jump there. But it's still pumpable. You can still actually pump it, so it's still liquid. Okay. The next step is what's called dewatering, and I'll give an unfortunate example of what this is like. They call it sludge cake because it has the consistency of like a birthday cake. So just for something in your mind, it's like a moist solids. And there that's another factor of that might be 1/20th of the volume of a liquid sludge. So now you're really taking out a lot of water in that case. Even though it looks solid, there's still a decent amount of water that's still in it. So why would you choose thickening over dewatering? It partially depends on the availability of your sludge disposal. What are your sludge disposal options? Chatham has sludge dewatering. Their sludge goes to Maine right now. They truck it all the way to Maine. Other facilities that thicken their sludge, right now they go to Cranston, Rhode Island. So unfortunately, the sludge market it's privatized. So there isn't, it's not something that the state or the federal government manage. It's, wherever it's cost effective, whoever, wants to take in sludge, they do it, and it might not be convenient for you. It might be convenient for Woonsocket, Rhode Island, because they're right near Cranston, right? But it may not be convenient for people on the Cape. There is an entity that is exploring a sludge receiving facility in this just general area. Yarmouth, I've heard Plymouth, I've heard Fall River. And, sometimes you're limited by, what they want to accept. A lot of facilities like to accept thickened sludge because they can mix everything they get from everywhere, and then when they dewater it, they get a consistent product. You'll end up with something very inconsistent if you do, something from Mashpee, and then you get a next load from Falmouth, and then they try and mix it, and you can only mix it if it's able to be pumped. So, I will say that another big factor that's come about in the past 2 years is PFAS in sludge. And it's a big problem, and I'll tell you, I'll be honest, it's a big problem right now in the sense that it is regulated differently in different states, and in a very extreme sense in Maine, and that's where Chatham is sending their sludge right now. There are some places that are afraid to accept dewatered sludge if they know there's PFAS in it. And there's PFAS in all sludge, but if someone has tested it and determined that it's in there, they have to turn those results over, and it may not be accepted by some facilities will actually turn you down if you have tested it and found that you have PFAS in it. So that is a real big unknown in the market right now. So
the bottom line is that we still need to do something about sludge in the final analysis.
you still do, correct. I brought up PFAS because that's a cost uncertainty. So it doesn't take away from the fact that you still should be doing something. It's just a big factor in the cost.
Yes, I understand that. But in our joint meeting, there was a question about what we were going to be doing in our overall planning about sludge disposal, and we're going to have an answer for people if we're going to have them agree on what we're planning.
Yes, Meredith. And Glenn Harrington's in the room. I don't know if you can see him, but
No.
he was one of the people who posed that question, and little by little, I think we're trying to answer it.
So I'm going to walk through, again, although I don't think your final decision should be based on cost, I'm going to show some costs, okay, just so we can talk about it. So this is costs related to disposal of liquid sludge. So over and I'm calling this stage 8, just that's double the size of stage 4. That may not be a term that you're using, but I'm using that just to show double the size.
So it's phase 2. What you're talking about is phase 2 right now.
Phase 2.
So stage 8 would correlate to all of phase 2?
Yes.
Okay.
So when the treatment facility starts up, you'll have a cost of about $25,000 a year. Once you get to stage 4, it'll be about $100,000 a year. And then if it doubles in size, you're looking at $200,000 a year. Again, please keep in mind, these costs increase every year. So this is looking at this today as if you had all of these things today, okay? Yeah. So it's just a conceptual look at this. So if you look at those costs over a 20-year period, and we roughly use the process called engineering economics, determining an annual cost and bringing it back to today's dollars. Ken, you're probably familiar with that. I'm not sure everybody else is, but it's a way of looking at, annual costs that go out 20 years and you bring them back to today's dollars, and it kind of takes out inflation and interest rate and it just brings it back to today's dollars. So looking at costs that go out 20 years or that happen 20 years on an annual basis, you're looking at this $200,000 a year being worth about $5 million. So what's the cost of disposing of sludge over 20 years? It's roughly $5 million, let's say, okay? I'll bring this cost back so we could see it again. But just as a comparison, if you look at thickening, that cost of $5 million drops down to $1.5 million because you're now shipping less water. So you will see quite a savings, okay? And then if you look at it dewatered, it's significantly less, okay? But in order to do that, you have to invest in capital, right?
I was going to say,
Okay.
what's your investment to get you savings?
Well, so
Just wait.
yeah, so I'm going to show some. I'll show some of that in a minute. So, so first I'm going to talk about thickening sludge, all right? And I'm going to show a figure on a site plan too. So what's included in this? You need a thickening process. This is a piece of equipment. I'll show you an example of one. You need a building to house that, and it's going to house pumps and other types of electrical rooms, HVAC equipment. So you need a building. You still need You still need holding tanks for liquid sludge because you're going to be generating sludge. It's got to be stored because you're only going to thicken during daylight hours. So you have to have a place to store liquid sludge until you're ready to thicken it. Then you have to have a way of holding your thickened sludge because you're going to still have a tanker truck that's going to come to the site on occasion, and then when that tanker truck comes, then you're going to pump your sludge onto there. So you still have to hold the sludge in various forms until you can ship it off-site. Does everybody basically understand that? And then you're going to need odor control. There's a
Why
lot.
do you only do
Sorry.
it during daylight hours?
So the equipment can be automated. Some of it can be automated. So you could do it. You could do it during off hours. I will say normally for facilities of your size, it's normally done during normal work hours. A lot of operators like to be there in case there's a problem. Okay, it can be automated. Large facilities will process sludge over 24 hours. A lot of them might have personnel on site though, so. So just please keep in mind, there's a lot of things here that I haven't asked you about or talked to you about, actual building layouts. There's issues with the cost of what PFAS might have on the industry. Transportation costs, as you can imagine, can have a big impact. So if you're hauling liquid sludge and the price of gas is $4.50, you know, that's going to cost a lot more. So there's a lot of things that have an impact on this. The other thing to think about is that although when we put in municipal facilities, the life expectancy is generally seen to be 20 years, a lot of that infrastructure will last more than 20 years, okay? Equipment is generally seen to have a 20-year life, but buildings and tanks, I mean, that's gonna last 50 years or more. So when you do your cost analysis, it's not quite fair to look at it only a 20-year period. I did a 20-year period because that's the common period that you look at, okay? So there's other factors to keep in mind with regard to that. I'm also going to show you some things that can be phased. I haven't looked at phasing it, starting small and going, I didn't look at that, okay? So, and that'll save some money and you won't see the full impact immediately. So I'm showing something here just to illustrate an example. This is Town of Falmouth. So this is their sludge processing facility. This structure right here in the middle is where they do their sludge thickening. This here and on this side is their liquid sludge holding tanks. And then in the back are their thickened sludge holding tanks. Okay, so the liquid sludge comes into this tank, they hold it until they're ready to thicken. It gets pumped into the sludge thickening process in this building. And then the thickened sludge is discharged in the back here to thickened sludge tanks. And then they have other pumps that will pump out to a waiting truck that sits out in the front here. And that's the process.
Mark, how long does the process take for, an amount of sludge to be processed?
So, trying to think of just how to answer it. I mean, typically what happens is in Falmouth, they'll probably allow their tanks to get reasonably full, and then they'll spend six out of 8 hours in a day to process the sludge, and then they might not have to do it for a couple of days while the tanks fill again, and then they'll process it again. In the winter, they might do it twice a month.
Okay.
Okay. In the summer, they might do it 3 times a week, so just depends. And just like the sizing of the facility, the sizing of this facility is going to be governed by your summertime wastewater flows, which is the peak for the facility. So that'll also need to be sized to match that. So,
Mark, is there a discharge from this operation?
So good question. So the water that is separated from the sludge gets returned back into the process for treatment.
Okay.
And this is actually a one of, I'd say, 3, 4, 5 different types of mechanisms that are used for sludge thickening. What happens is the sludge is combined with a polymer. The polymer combines the sludge particles, which helps to separate the water from the sludge. and then the sludge is placed on a, this is called a gravity belt thickener. So it's a belt with holes in it, and the sludge sits on here, and as it makes its way down, the water just kind of falls out underneath, and when it gets to the end, it's a thickened sludge. So it's a pretty simple process. Okay, so I introduced these costs earlier. So if you look at, if you're going to spend, say, $5 million in hauling liquid sludge, and you're going to spend $1.5 million hauling thickened sludge, if you wanted to look at the cost effectiveness of a thickening facility, you'd want to be able to build your thickening facility for $3 million or less. Does that make sense? That's your savings, right?
So it's a wash.
Correct. Okay.
Except we would probably be using 0% money with 25% off.
Correct. Yes, that's right. And I'm also not including other things in here. I'm not including electricity. This is super simple. Okay. All right. So you'd save $3 million. Can you build a thickening facility for $3 million? Maybe if you phase it. I was coming up with something between 5 and 10 for the full build out. If you phase it, probably. Okay. So I think it can be done, but I want to emphasize that there's other reasons to put this in besides this. I think that, this is telling me you should be thinking about this because there's a lot of money to be saved, and there's other reasons to do this, such as, reduction in traffic from the hauling of these sludge trucks that are going to come to the site. Also the example I gave earlier where you're going to have to be calling a lot of trucks over to be hauling your sludge, and there are times when maybe you might not be able to get enough trucks. And what happens is if you can't haul enough sludge, it backs up your treatment process, and it's going to affect the quality of your treatment. Okay, so you don't want any impediment to being able to get rid of your sludge, because that will just affect your treatment. So, this is telling me you're becoming of the size where if you phase this, it might well be cost effective, but you should be looking at it. You're going to be big enough. All the other facilities of your size have that, and it's worth doing.
Mark, is there an odor here? And because we're concerned about that.
Yes.
Of course, there's odors come out.
That's why I kind of brought it up.
Yeah. So actually, I have it on a later slide, but yes, there is odor. The odors are going to be present. Well, let me show this, and I'll talk about the odors. They're everywhere. Okay. Yeah, but contained. So I showed you Falmouth. My very rough estimate is you'd need, these green tanks are liquid sludge holding tanks. This orange is a thickened sludge tank, and then this would be your sludge thickening process building. All of these tanks would need to be covered. You'd need to be pulling air out of those tanks and treating it. And this building would be odorous also, especially while you're processing, while you're thickening your sludge. Some thickening processes have equipment that is enclosed, and you can actually pull air off of the treatment process itself. Some operators don't like that because if it's enclosed, you can't see it, you can't see how it's operating. So it's a balance.
But I mean, the odors don't get out to the street.
No.
I went to Chatham and they didn't travel that far.
So Chatham has what I would call an open treatment process where inside the building, the odors go out into the building, so the entire
been there.
building is treated, the air is treated. So you just end up with a bigger odor control system.
Yeah, you couldn't, unless you're close to the building, you didn't even notice it
Yeah.
until you got rid of the building.
So, Mark, is this to scale? So we would effectively lose 2 sand beds based on the need for a building of that size?
Yes, but wait till I get to the end and we'll
Okay.
revisit that, okay?
Okay.
So, yeah, I felt like this was best to show first, but for some reason it wasn't. But I'll show.
No, it's
I'll
okay.
show.
We'll follow you.
So, It is, yes, it is roughly to scale, though, to answer your question.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about dewatered sludge. That's another option. So dewatered sludge, it's similar in the sense that, you'd need to pick a dewatering process. You'd still have a building that's going to house pumps. The one difference here is that because the end product of dewatering is unable to be pumped, you probably will need a conveyor instead of a pump, because you'll have to move it from the end of your dewatering process to a dumpster. So that's typically done with a conveyor, okay? Just like if you picture the conveyor at a grocery store, it's quite similar, okay?
Or you just put your dumpster under the end of the dewatering.
That's possible. Some that could be done too. Yep. You still need holding tanks for your liquid sludge. If you may need either a larger building or a building to house the dumpster that might house a building to house the dumpster for the sludge, the dewatered sludge, and then odor control. And then a lot of these other items at the bottom I just talked about. There's a lot of things we haven't talked about. Okay, but so Chris brought up Chatham. This is Chatham. Chatham has there's 4 tanks here. 2 of them are actively used for liquid sludge storage, and they are covered, and they have odor control. These 2 tanks are planned to be converted within the next year and a half or so to sludge holding tanks, and again, treated with odor control. This building houses their dewatering process. And Chatham actually has an outdoor dumpster. They actually use a little tiny front end loader to pick up dewatered sludge, and then they move it over with the front end loader to put it in the dumpster. That was their preference. That's not common. Okay.
I'm happy for them.
You want to clean those tires?
Sorry.
I think they had a Bobcat.
Bobcat, that's what it is. Yes. So, and the process they use is a belt filter press. And what a belt filter press does is it has, I described the gravity belt thickener, which is a single belt that the sludge sits on. A belt filter press uses 2 belts, and it actually squeezes it, and it sends it around all these.
Squeezes the crap out of
It does, yeah, yes, exactly, yes. It squeezes the water out.
But it wasn't, you didn't really have odor till you got right near the building,
Yeah, yep.
and it wasn't bad at all. So it's almost too bad you couldn't show people that, if you're proposing this, so you that lived around there, have them go by and see how it is in actual practice.
So let's look at dewatered sludge costs. So this is the 4.8 million, roughly 5 million I showed before, 500,000 for dewatered sludge. So now can you do a dewatered sludge facility for 4.3 million? Again, if you're trying to purely make it cost effective, I'm thinking that it could be in the 6 to 12 million range, but again, that could be phased to make it less expensive. And there are ways to make this financially work if it's not cost effective to be very close. And I would say that there are overriding factors that would push you in the direction of you should be thinking about doing this, especially with what Chris said about having grant funding. That can really push the equation in the other direction. So, and now's the time to think about that when that funding exists too, right? I don't know how much longer the funding is. You never know how long the funding's around for. So
That's right.
So a dewatered sludge facility is pretty similar. You still have liquid sludge holding tanks. Those are the green. You'd have a dewatering facility and perhaps a garage or something like that to store dewatered sludge in a dumpster. That gets hauled by like a flatbed truck. So you'll have a dumpster and it would get hauled. They would pull the dumpster onto the flatbed truck. That's for example, what they do in Chatham. And on the Cape, what happens is that ends up going to Yarmouth. They kind of accumulate sludge from different areas, and then they send it up to Maine to a composting facility. So they reuse it.
They do,
In,
for now.
not for, not for plants that grow vegetables that we would eat, but, it's reused in the sense that you can add it to the ground for non-human consumption items, All right. Any general questions about thickening and dewatering? If
I
you,
think we just have to realize the flexibility it would give the town of Mashpee the options that, the more you have, the easier it is then to play the market and to see what you can do for the cheapest amount. But yeah, I think they need to move something forward.
if you leave with anything, it would be my suggestion is this is something you need to look at. Given the size that you're going to be, you should be looking at it. Every other facility that is in the size that you are now talking about has something like this, whether dewatering or thickening. So,
Mark, in your experience, which one would you go with?
so the thickening gives you the ability, you have sometimes in the past you've had more of an ability to shop it around. Right now, the closest place that Chatham has found to get rid of their sludge is in Maine, and that's concerning to me. I mean, I'm if you'd asked me 2 years ago, it would have been easier for me to answer. This PFAS has really thrown a monkey wrench into the situation. The facility that is, it's a private facility that's planned in either Yarmouth or Plymouth or Fall River. That facility, I've seen some plans for it where they have a proposal to deal with PFAS on their site. So it's not something that you would have to deal with. So they're prepared to deal with it if they have to, but nobody knows yet. So. All right, so this last topic is to walk you through some options on the site. So this is the plan that's shown in the contract documents now. So this is the water resource recovery facility. The middle part here are the sand beds, and then these are the future sand beds. So something that Anastasia pointed out to me that's important to keep in mind is that these sand beds, although they're in the middle of the site, this is the approval that we've gotten for the current discharge on the site. So just keep that in mind as we go through this, okay? We don't have an approval for here, for this end of the site. Our approval is for here, okay? So I'm going to walk you through an aerial photograph, and I have little figures that I've put together that we'll walk through to show how things fit on the site. So again, this is the water resource recovery facility and the sand beds. So we have a figure here showing this is the property that you're considering, correct?
Yes.
So
Yeah, the leased property.
the leased property. All right, so bear with me a second here. Oh, shoot. What happened? All right. All right. It's worked easier on my computer. All right.
What are you trying to drag that?
I'm trying to rotate it, and it's not really doing it for me on here. Won't even move. All right, that's okay.
We get it. The next slide, Will.
Well, all right, so what I was going to do was move it up to here and show you that it fits in that spot, okay?
That's what I figured you were doing.
So,
The thing you
No, I don't believe you.
consider though, Mark, when you're doing
Show
that,
us.
what's that?
is what are these 150-foot setback and
Yeah.
200 down here? You gotta throw your 150-foot setback on. if you're gonna
On
put
here?
Sludge behind people's backyards.
So this is, so let me just show you the next slide. Let me just get into this. I wasn't going to put sludge there. What I was going to do
Move sand beds.
was put the sand beds there.
Yeah.
those are, of all the things that you can
Quiet.
have, that's the nicest thing to have there.
Exactly.
Right? That's the no odors. This is, and they would generally fit in the piece that's been cleared. So I don't know what the buffer is, but it's in the spot that's cleared.
Yeah, I wasn't here when things were agreed on, but I know there was, I was told that they had to buffer the neighborhoods by a certain amount, and it looks like it's two different amounts, one from Carlton, and then one from where the houses are was a greater amount.
And there's opportunities where we can play with the shape and
Yeah.
maximize that buffer too. Like we're showing it a very simplistic.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be like that.
Yep, that's right. It's actually slightly bigger too. So there's ways we could work around if we needed to take a little bit more out of here. So,
You
I-
get a higher infiltration rate, that might all go away.
and and possibly that too, but it's, I guess what I want to show is I feel, I think you'll see as we walk through this, and you might already see this from what I was showing before, is that I think that this is going to be needed, okay? That's, I think this spot would be useful for you to
Get
grab
hold
if
of.
you can,
Yeah.
so. So green is stage 1, and then the orange are buildings that are shown on the plans for future, okay? So I don't have them labeled, but I'm happy to talk about what each of them are as we walk through this if you have questions. So this is one way to expand, okay? So basically the green is stage 1, what's needed for stage 1. And, this is a disruption of what's currently designed. So this is one example. This is based on some discussions that we've had about can you do that? What can you fit on the site and where? And, this would allow a simple expansion, have all the liquid processes being in one part of the property. You could have the sludge processes in the other part of the property, odor control for the sludge processes, generator for the sludge processes, admin facility, odor control, generators for all these facilities. Again, this is one example. These boxes can be moved around on the site. It's not as easy as it would have been 2 years ago when there was nothing designed, but you
Right.
still, I think you could see, at least from this illustration, that this is an important, we're going to need more property. I can't take all this stuff and put it over here. There's just not enough room.
So the 6 yellow cubes are part of the treatment technology.
On the right side here?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, so these are sludge processing. This is odor control for sludge processing. So this is all sludge processing on this side.
So all the liquid is on the left.
Yeah, right here I have all the liquid processes on the left-hand side here.
So the new in blue and red, would they take the place of our planned beds 1 through 4?
4 through
No,
5 through
no,
8.
these are up here are
8.
5 through 8.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
1
so
through 4 stay
so
there.
this is, I have 1 through 4 is staying right, it's in the middle here because this is the approval is for these beds.
Okay.
So it's in the middle of the site. I've real basic way shown, the drive can still remain like this, okay? So you're not playing with the currently approved access to the site.
I think you could actually move that lower yellow box, and not lose those 2 beds. And then
That's
you could-
possible.
And you could keep 2 beds up top and
Yep.
maintain a good buffer from the houses.
Yep, and that's possible too. Yep. But I think, we do need some property here because if we can't get this, then, we can't get this. This is all buffer. And then now you're encroaching this way, which we're not trying not to, right? So this is, I would say that, this is showing it's important to try and get that.
This is very well done, Mark.
Mark, this is a really great presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So informative.
We just walk through a couple of other things here. I don't know if this is just showing processes by color, just so you can see which ones are related to each other. So these are the main treatment process, admin facility, yellow is generators, red is odor control, and this purple is the preliminary treatment. I'm happy to go back to these. Oh, that's Anastasia. So, and what Chris said is right. I mean, so what I showed here is what I would consider to be kind of like a build out for the sludge processing. Again, you don't have to do that all at once, but you want to save space for it. This could perhaps be more efficiently drawn, get odor control up here and maybe save some space to continue with the sand beds there, so. So I do think it's important for your future to latch onto that property. And Anastasia is going to talk a little bit about the sand beds and the flow rates next. But I do think, I mean, the bottom line is I think that's important to get that property.
Is that currently on the market?
The town owns it. They lease it currently,
It's a landscaper.
Oh,
but it ends in June. So
okay.
what are you thinking, Mark, in terms of our planning? When would we start to need that parcel?
Like, if we want to lease it again, how long could the lease be?
I'm going to let Anastasia talk now.
Go year to year.
Yeah.
So this next slide outlines bed capacity depending on how many beds are built and what the hydraulic rate is. So currently, when we designed it, we're required to design for 7 gallons per day per square foot, which is very, very low compared to what infiltration tests have shown. It's sand. Water goes down very, very quickly. So those first 4 beds in the middle of the site are sized for stage 1. If we can successfully increase the flow rate from 7 to 30, which has been done on other communities in the Cape, we could get all the way to stage 4. So that's the original layout with
Yeah.
just those 4 beds.
Right.
As we look at bigger flows, we would need 8 beds, whether all 8 of them are as they're originally laid out, or whether, as Mark recommended, we break them up and use part in the leased property. So starting with our design flow, those 8 would get you to stage 2, which is double what we're constructing now. If you can get that 7 to 12, you can get the original build out with the 8 beds. And if you bump it up to 25, you could get all of what you're calling phase 2 now with those 8 beds. Again, whether they're on the current site or whether it's a combination of the leased and the current site. So as Mark said, it gives a lot of flexibility to be able to have that leased property, particularly to potentially be able to site some of this recharge on it.
So, to Mike's question, what's your sense of how soon we would need to have access to that site?
So if the town is looking at phase 2 being all 8 stages, then you would need it for your next construction project.
Right,
Because you would want to build those next 4 beds. So I would recommend as quickly as possible so that design can proceed with the certainty of knowing that that's where they're going. And you would also need to do hydraulic load tests.
Yeah.
Likely it's very similar soil, but you would have to go through a similar process that we went through with these beds here.
okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
so as soon as possible.
Yep.
So, and Anastasia, in order to get 1 million gallons in the ground, we need to establish a rate of 25 gallons per day per square foot,
Yes,
and we would need all 8 beds,
yes.
okay?
But if you can do both of those, you can have all your flow on one site.
Right.
Okay.
The one thing I would add to that is that the 30 gallons per day per square foot, or actually I should say anything above 7, thus far the state has only allowed with in situ testing of wastewater.
Right.
Okay, so when we did our testing, it was with clean water. And the water that you're going to have from this plant is quite clean, but the state has only allowed anything above 7 to be done with actual wastewater. So we've done testing in Falmouth, for example, with actual wastewater, and have demonstrated, just because we could only get a certain amount of flow, that we can, 11? Is that what we're doing? 12 gallons per day per square
But
foot.
we capped out, we did it in 2020 when it was COVID, and there just wasn't as much flow as you usually have. So it's likely those beds can take a lot more.
And the the approval that we've gotten previously for a 30 gallon per day per square foot in Chatham was done with the caveat that we would need to demonstrate it with wastewater, but they did say that they would entertain that. So it's one of the few times where it's actually been put in writing by the state, so.
Was it similar permeability for Chatham to here?
Yeah.
Should be.
Yeah.
Should be.
Oh,
Same
that's
sand
plain.
pretty much, right?
Yeah, it should be.
And this will be a cleaner effluent with an MBR process,
It will be a little bit cleaner, yeah.
which means that it goes faster into the ground.
So for the committee, we, in order to address this, we asked GHD to do a proposal for running another hydraulic test with wastewater possibly from Mashpee Commons.
Which is the same process, so it's a apples to apples
Just
comparison.
borrow the wastewater.
Hopefully they're looking to give it away.
So theoretically, if these folks run it in the same place and we get the same results, we should be able to get up to 30 gallons per day per square foot. We're going to try and run it. That's one of the things that Gottlieb put in as a
warrant article.
warrant article, and we'd like to run it this year. So it would probably happen in June.
Great.
Is that it, you guys?
That's,
That was good, really good.
thank you.
Can we get a copy of that, please?
Of course.
Yeah, please.
I bet that's what's in those boxes.
I'm sorry?
No, it's not.
Those are Christmas gifts.
Contractors,
Right.
it actually wasn't their fault. FedEx delivered them late. They gave them a time they were supposed to deliver by, and it was right when it was supposed to be, but FedEx delivered them late, so we had to disqualify.
Oh.
Say that again, did these guys get disqualified?
These were 2 subs, but yeah, they get disqualified because they didn't make the 10 o'clock deadline.
Oh,
But
shoot.
they have to return the documents,
Yeah,
so they're just bringing them back to Sandra to return the documents to because we send letters out that you've been disqualified.
okay.
And we send out letters to everyone that's been qualified.
Well, thank you very much, guys, for
right.
coming
Thank
in
you.
and doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, it's not a reflection of the contractor, it's just that it got there too late.
And Anastasia,
Yeah.
will you put Susan on the distribution list too?
Yes.
Susan.
Could you actually just give me your email really quickly? It's,
So she can just put that in with the minutes.
okay, next item. I think I sent out to everybody the warrant articles prepared for May town meeting, and I wondered if there was any discussion about those.
thank you. Have that to you shortly.
I drafted the first draft, and Gottlieb butchered it, and that's what you're seeing now, is basically Gottlieb's write-up. And he should know how to do it.
pretty straightforward. We just have to generate some numbers for both of them. And just for those in the room that don't know, the articles are all due February 14th. And any money items that are missing have to be generated by the end of March. That's where the X's are, so it's, we'll have to find a number for both those articles, and we're actually shooting for mid-March.
Next item, Chris, can you talk to us about what happened in the meeting this morning
Okay.
and the result?
What
We need to
did,
act on these first?
we had a meeting this morning on the project schedule. We wanted to get everyone on the same page and understand really what Andy was looking for, what our schedule is. So the way the schedule is, let me pass these around.
Mike, do we need to act on these warrant articles, they, just as they are? Do we need to approve them or do anything with them?
Which one?
The warrant articles.
The page you handed.
Yes, we should vote on, I believe, Chris, should we
we?
vote on agreeing that that's a good,
I'm not sure of the process, but it wouldn't hurt, I guess.
I think, let's do that before we
Second.
vote.
All in favor? Al?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Meredith?
Yes.
Okay. So,
We've approved them subject to the addition of the dollar amounts that we're going to need.
Okay, the schedule I handed you, it's basically driven by the SRF program and deadlines. So if, to go forward with phase two, you'd have to first, we're gonna solicit, we're gonna try to find the number for that article that's going in. And the article is to fund the full design of phase two. So it's, you know, to fund a final design on all sections 2A through E. So the articles for that design cost. So first, we're gonna solicit proposals from both GHD and EPG for final design of phases 2A and 2E individually. The proposal's gonna include 25% design cost and a caveat to terminate the contract after that if the commission decides not to go forward with all or part of the project. And also included is approximate cost estimate of the new plant design and phase one upgrades. The reason this is done is you have to submit to SRF in August cost of the project. So they do all 5 phases, consultant. We get a cost on each phase. I'm having them break it down so it's individual proposals. We might say, geez, we can't afford, you know, we can only afford phase 2A or 2B. Well, we're gonna go for all of it or part of it. So that way you've only paid them for a 25% design. So you might say, go forward with this one, this one, this one. But they're gonna give us a final design cost, so we're gonna err on the conservative side for the town meeting article. We're gonna ask for the whole thing. May not use it, you know, and most likely won't, you know, I don't know if they will try to do all 5 phases at once. But that's why that's driven this way, is because of that August deadline to actually have a probable cost. So to do that, we have to first go to the May town meeting and have the article pass that you just voted on. Immediately after, you'd have to award the contract, because they'd only have from the beginning of May, because I think the town meeting's the first week in May, is it? I think it's early on.
Okay,
I believe
Not
it
sure.
is, but- Yeah, first Monday. So they'd have from then till August to do 5 25% designs and 5 probable costs to to present, and they present all of them to SRF. You might not do them all, but you'd still present the number. And then once that number, the commission would decide what they're going forward with. So if they decide we're going forward with this one, that one, whatever, from that August date on to 2 Decembers from then, December 23, you'd be doing all your permitting, all your design work. And in the meantime, you'd have to get a year from May, you'd have to get the construction funding approvals. This was done exactly as it was for Phase 1, where Phase 1 got the design approval in 1 May, submitted in August. They started designing it, got the funding approved for the construction itself in this past May, and now we're going for design completion and construction commencement. So by, the goal would be by December, November to December, have all your permits in hand. And I think they could actually do that quicker because you might not have, the first 4 parts of Phase 2A through D don't have a plant, but would have plant upgrades. And that would probably have to be addressed at the fall town meeting. Decide, finding out the magnitude of the plant upgrades, what the design cost would be, so that could be done in concert with the collection system. Phase 2E is a little different. There's some decisions to be made there that still haven't been made. But that's the schedule for ideal situation, or what would happen if Phase 2 got approved in May for the design. That's a schedule to bring it from design to start a construction in April 24. So, and that's the same track as this one has taken. The next thing, I don't know, does anyone have any questions or anything on this? This was my homework assignment from 11 o'clock until 2.
I have a couple of little changes, but I'll get them to you.
Yep.
And then we have to figure out how to factor in what we heard today,
I know,
which is not on anybody's plan anywhere,
Yeah.
for any phase.
I know, Chris, how are we, well, I guess I'm a little early with this question, but how would we articulate to EP and GHD what we learned today?
That's the next sheet I'm giving you.
Oh, okay.
So I did this quick. You might see a few things you might want to change. What our plans were is we were going to sit down individually with each consultant, make sure they're on the same page on what we're looking for proposal. So I did this just because I didn't want to wait till the next meeting to get things to you. And so, and I emailed this stuff to Andy as well. So he can get on it. I said, I'm going to have to put out a request for proposal. And this is pretty much the outline that I was going to do for the meeting with the consultants. And I'll go through why I did what I did. But a lot of this came out of a meeting we had this morning.
Thank you.
To really make sure, see where we're going and try to keep things moving.
Thank you.
And just because of our deadline, I shouldn't talk when I'm away from the mic, because of our deadline with the town meeting, I wanted to get this moving and get it to you so we can take it in. I wanted to meet with the consultants next week, so we'll give them more time instead of waiting until the February 10th meeting. And so what happened here is this is the scope for design for the article for the full design of Phase 2. So the scope, I put full design and permitting of Phase 2, Sections 2A through E. I want the proposal to include a cost breakdown for for each phase section. That's a design cost breakdown. We're not going to get the cost of the job till the 25% plan's done. But this is just for design. So we'll put it out to, just put out a little money to try to get an answer on where we're going. So I want the proposal to include section 20, so for each section, 25% design and probable construction costs. That's a number they'll generate in August, once they get their 25% design. Then I want the proposal to include a caveat, whereas the contract can be terminated after the 25% design stage if the commission chooses not to go forward with the project or any section of the project. So you're not paying for full design until it gives you a way out. And then the assumptions for the proposal is sections 2A through 2D will discharge the transfer station, wastewater treatment facility. So this means these ones, it's going to be design of collection system only, and that's all that's needed, pumps and pipes. And then 2E will either discharge to a new plant in Back Road, Joint Base Cape Cod, or possibly piped to Site 4. So I'm not sure if the Site 4 is going to be able to handle that extra flow, because that's like 200,000 2E.
It's
Mike, was it?
200,000.
About 200,000.
Yeah. So I also wanted the proposal to include survey and plan work for all takings, because when this last one's been done, none of that was included. And if I didn't walk on board, we're having trouble meeting the deadlines as it is, because of, all what you have to go through for takings and, survey work, and, we're trying to do condos, and, it was a process that probably should have been included, so I want to include it this time, so it puts it on the consultant. And then I just put proposal, assume the town provides aerial surveys for each section. We're having a company do an aerial, fly the entire town, so they can produce survey quality plans to, sub-inch elevation accuracy. They're still going to have to do some on-the-ground stuff, like sill elevations on houses, and they might pick up pipes underground that an aerial wouldn't pick up to see if there's any utility conflicts. But this survey work saves the town a ton of money. The survey work on phase 1 was $400,000 or $500,000 because it was all done by hand. This, 90% of it will be done by aerial, and I'm getting all 5 sections at a cost of less than $200,000. And all 5 sections, each one of them is bigger than phase 1. So it's a substantial savings.
When do you think you're going to have that, Chris? When will people have it to
I'm going to actually
use?
call him tomorrow to see when I give him the go-ahead to when he can get it done. He's going to fly the town, and then what happens after that is he gets his photographs and all of his work. Then he gives me, like they used to take the photograph and mail it to me and put pinpricks in it, and on the back side of the photograph it would say like center back catch basin, front of utility pole, because you get control in 2 planes, horizontal and vertical. So I give him a bunch of different verticals, and then horizontals, you generally give him 3 in each section to create a triangle, so we could triangulate the whole section onto your, in this case, your GIS coordinate system. I'd go out on mass state plane coordinates with a GPS, and probably spend a day just taking 30 shots. And then based on those shots, he could give me survey quality plans for each section, and any section in town for that matter that I delineate for him. I don't know how long it takes. I do the control points before May. I'm sure there's some consultant money where I could have a survey company go out for a day. And, I know the consultants, EPG has their own stuff. They could go out, or they could use that JC that they've been using, John Churchill from Wareham's got a lot of control here. But you'd set the points, and then you'd give him the go-ahead. I don't know how long it would take him, but he wouldn't be able to get it done in time for their August, so they'd have to go off what's called LiDAR, or the assessor's GIS site. They'd have to go off one of them to generate their 25% plan. But then, once these aerials come in, you could say, hand it to them and just say, bring it in, it pop right in on their coordinate system.
Good.
And put them a step ahead, because you'd have accurate data. I mean, we were out doing surveying a few months ago here, and you'd have accurate data by, September. And you'd have it popped right in, so you could go to final design a lot quicker.
Good.
So that's proposal, if you want to take it in. We haven't set dates for meetings with the consultants, was hoping we're going to try to do it next week. So if anyone has any comments, questions, or revisions on this, if you could get them to me, say by Tuesday, I think, is fair?
Can I ask a question now?
Yeah,
What about pumping stations options?
that's considered in full design.
Is that going to be, that's not in the 25%?
Oh, yeah, no, that's in there.
Yeah, so they'll give you options of where they could put pumping stations, or are they just going to say,
They're
here?
what they're gonna do is, they'll take the road profiles. So they'll take the, like, there's a thing called LiDAR, and there's different mapping things out there. They'll pick through all the maps, and they'll create rough road profiles, find their highs and lows, end up doing a bunch of plan and profile sheets, where they have the road with the profile underneath with all the elevations. They'll figure out where to put all their pipes as quick as they can. And then based on the length of pipe, the roadways, all this, then they'll generate their probable cost. And that'll generate where their pump stations are gonna go.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know how many pumping stations we're talking per each area then.
There was, I think, a total of about 15
15.
in all. I counted them
Total?
the other day. But there was of that magnitude, somewhere around 15,
Okay.
I think. And some of them, I mean, you're gonna be in situations where you're doing land takings from people. And so that's why I wanted to bring that part of it on quick. Because if you're doing land takings that are hostile, you still can do it by eminent domain. The way the article will have to be written next May is that could possibly be included, because if you're doing land takings, if you have to do an appropriation for a land taking, you have to go to town meeting to do it and appropriate the money. If your construction costs 2 Mays from now, that article includes, in other words, it says for construction, including any necessary easements or land takings, you don't. The selectmen of the sewer commission can do the taking in a public meeting, public hearing. And that's keeps you from having to deal with that process, because you'd either have to wait to the next town meeting, or you'd have to call a special one if you had to, but that keeps you from having to do that.
Thank you.
Because you may have to, you're gonna put these in where they go based on topography, and they could end up in someone's front yard, or it could end up anywhere.
Thank you.
Good job on that, Chris.
Al?
I have two things, one very minor, and I think one very major, about 2E. And before I do that, the minutes that went out, we never approved them, but I think we need to change, under public, we have Chris and Andy as the public.
My mistake.
We've had a chat.
Squared away?
Yep,
Okay.
we've had a chat about it, thank you.
Okay, 2E, the number that I thought we talked about when we were at Joint Base Cape Cod was 80,000 gallons. I don't know why that keeps coming, that they were gonna take, does that sound right?
I think it's always been around 200,000 now.
200,
Yeah.
okay. Because I just did a little experimenting. Southport is right here, okay, right next to the thing. And Southport is permitted for 172,000 gallons. And and that was a tremendous overshoot because they took the standard 110 gallons per bedroom type of thing. Well, there's no building in Southport that has more than 2 people. Matter of fact, probably 20% only have 1 person. Okay? So it's way over-designed. It was also designed to have a big commercial kitchen operating and a big concession going over by the golf course. So the current flow, from what I've been hearing, in the summertime, max flow is 35,000.
Wow.
A little bit of excess capacity there, huh?
So I was thinking, you know, if we're trying to do something quick with John's Pond, you could take 120,000 or something and run it through that plant if they were willing to do it, or I don't know if you buy the plant, I don't know what it is, but I just thought it was something we ought to consider, because every time we go to Joint Base Cape Cod, we don't seem to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you know what they treat to, Al? I think it's probably 10 milligrams,
I think
probably.
they treat to 3, don't they?
I don't know.
I know that they just spent $4 million on deferred maintenance of the plant and got recertified. I can't tell you, I wasn't able to get the information. They seem to be very secretive about that type of thing.
But it's public information, you could get it.
Yeah,
I actually, but water, I don't know if they're on a master meter for water. If they're on a master meter, you just get it from Andy Marks. Unless, because I know Willow Bend, I believe, may be on a master meter. They know they know their plant flows, but their plant flows are public, as you said, because they have to be recorded to DEP.
Right.
MEPA, yeah, they're reported every month. I mean,
Yeah.
at Windchime, I've got them posting it on our internal site so that we can see what's happening at our treatment plant month by month. So that information is out there.
I had a Southport resident come up a month or 2 ago and just asked about that, if we were taking over their plant too, because they heard things would go. And I said, well, I think it would be worth talking about, just it's out there, to see what their capacity is. It might be, and like Al said, it's right next door to 2E.
Interesting.
So it's something that I think it's definitely worth pursuing.
Let's look into that.
Yeah.
I have the name of the chairman of the board, and also the
Now, wasn't that information provided in spreadsheets by Joe? Didn't Joe collect all that data
It's in the,
and pass it on to us a while back with his summary? Thought Joe
Might
did
have.
that.
it wasn't in there, but it was in the
people who run some.
wastewater management, nitrogen management report.
Because
It's gonna be hard.
I live there, I would like to stay clear.
Okay.
Oh, are you there?
Oh, you live in there?
Good to know.
I forget the gentleman that came in and talked to me, and I don't know his role.
Yeah,
but
Jim is just a concerned Southporter. He's a civil engineer. and,
Yeah. Okay, that was who it was.
Okay, I will look into what the actual flows are,
Interesting.
and I think we better discuss this further. And I'll also find out what the treatment level is.
Yeah, the other thing, that when I was looking at this map, is I don't know where the sewage treatment plant for the high school,
It's kind of, as you're looking at the site, I think it's off to the left.
no, I mean, I don't know where it is capacity-wise, because if it does have some capacity, you could grab that park right next to it, or you could, you know what I'm saying? Right
Yeah.
across the street. And just, But between those two, I think you could take a big bite out of 2E.
I can talk to Catherine, because she's in charge of W director's in charge of
The high school?
overseeing that, and they have Weston and Sampson is the operator.
For the high school?
Huh?
For the
For the
high school treatment
yeah,
plant?
Yeah,
Okay.
I know it's designed for 18,000,
The high school?
the high school.
Okay.
I don't know what the flows are now that they've tied in Breezy Acres, and, because they're looking to do, and have done an expansion of Breezy Acres, so I just have to look at the flows to see what they're getting for that. But I know it's built for 18,000.
Is
not that
Breezy
much.
Acres the manufactured home area?
The trailer park?
Yeah,
There's been no discussion or, for what they're going to do.
okay.
So I would not consider that at this point. But before Breezy Acres was tied in, the high school was only putting out 2,000 to 3,000 gallons. So,
Wow.
so it was considerably well below their design. And so when Breezy Acres tied in, as they did in Marston's Mills with the elementary school and the middle school, that it helped quite a bit with the operation of the plant.
Okay. Do you know what the treatment level is, Glenn, at the high school?
It was a batch reactor. I don't know
Oh.
if they've changed it. They may have changed it.
So it's probably 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know that Southport is RBC.
RBCs. Right.
Yeah, and they have the ability to add either 1 or 2 more trains to that.
Right.
So I think that is a valid, something to look into for sure.
Okay.
Because I think that has the ability to expand.
All right. All right, we will look into those.
Very interesting.
Before we jump off of that, we had a meeting 2 days ago with, I'm jumping ahead to JBCC meeting report. We had a meeting with Kennedy, Matt Kennedy, and I guess if you boil it all down, he's looking to find a way to modify the SRF rules such that a combination of a private-public entity can access SRF funds. That would be a first, because it's always been primarily for municipalities. But he's got some pretty sharp people working on it, and he got the impression from the folks in Sandwich, town manager in Sandwich, that it was looking like something that might be able to happen.
How
So
would they bid it?
I have no
That's
idea.
exactly,
That's the big question.
that's exactly what it's.
Exactly. But the guy they've got
Well,
working
they
on it,
want to do the construction themselves, that's the issue.
Yeah,
There's a big issue.
yeah, I mean, anyway.
the lawyer they have working on it, John Giorgio, is top-notch. And I'm guessing he's going to push the envelope pretty far and see what happens. Anyway, that's the way we left it. Matt was feeling good about the possibility, and he thought that as a result, it would really lower the cost from what he originally presented to us. So, still up in the air. All right. Chris, did you have more stuff?
Couple things minor, I mean, most of the stuff that we've been doing, we've gone over. Mass Historical, they've done digs at 2 sites. They found an old penny, I think. By old, for them it was old, for me it was relatively new. I think it was like 64 or something. But that was it. And so we're waiting on, and that was the treatment plant, and I don't know why they even did these things, but the plant had already been peppered with digs. So they had them do just the entranceway that was never done. And then a piece behind it towards the homes, towards, they didn't do, they missed a little piece. It wasn't much, but interesting. I went out there a couple days with them, and they just stand there with a screen about 2 foot square maybe, and they take turns. One guy's the shoveler, one guy's the screener, and they dig holes about 2 by 2 by about 3 feet deep. And they just screen everything in this 1/4-inch screen and see if they find anything. So they found nothing there, and on Brewster Road, they have to do Mashpee Neck Road. And that was actually all fenced with, that's all fenced with a 6-foot fence. So nobody's even gonna see the pump station there. And luckily, a tree fell on the fence and opened it up, so they have access now, because otherwise they would have to go through someone's backyard and go through a gate.
A tree fell, sure.
No, it did.
Everybody hear it.
It looked like it fell a while ago. So they have to do that one and Summerwood. But we're waiting on license agreements. Pat Costello prepared, and he also prepared the easement agreements for Summerwood and Sea Oaks and Willow Bend. And it's difficult, it's moving a little slow on their side. You know, town council has prepared everything. I think he has to, and we're just trying to, you know, and we shipped it all to them. Now it's their council's looking at everything. Hopefully, the Mass Historical agreements will go quick. And we've kind of told them there's a sense of urgency there, and we're hoping to get them next week so they can finish up their digs. Willow Bend wanted a few things in lieu of granting the easement on a friendly level for free. Not everything's free. They want us to paint a few crosswalks, which, you know, they have an issue there. I mean, it's dangerous because you can't even see the paint, so people wouldn't even slow down. And they want to put a berm, which I'm waiting to see the extent of what they want to do for a berm, because to put a berm on the side of the road, after talking to, you know, Catherine Laurent, and just construction, you get a road with, you know, nothing on it. To put a berm, you can't put it in the road because now you just narrow your lane. So you have to, you know, dig out, re-gravel, probably do a 3-foot strip of, you know, base course, top coat, and then put your berm on that. So it's a little bit of work. So they want assurance. Their attorney is working with our counsel, Pat Costello, and they've had a long relationship, so that's going to go. He wants something in writing saying we're going to do this, and so I don't think that's going to be that difficult, but that's where we are in the easements and the historical. So hopefully we can get through that historical, because that can be a process. I talked to the Mass Historical, and he actually, before he returned my call, Googled me, and he read the article about me in the paper. So he researched me, but so he's on board. He understands where we're coming from, and you know, he's willing to help out and not have it sit in the inbox for months.
Good.
So hopefully he'll, this will go smoothly.
I was wondering, Chris, having been at that conversation about the crosswalk, was the intention for us to do that this summer, this spring or summer?
What I suggested was the spring, before the snowbirds come flying in, because, you know, once May comes, they're probably going across them crosswalks, and
Yeah.
it's not a great situation. The paint is virtually gone, and you know, you don't, if possible, it's a bit of a dangerous situation. But my suggestion was have it done in the spring, and now it's a matter of looking to see what funds it's going to be costed out and where's the money coming from.
Does everybody know where we're talking about? It's on Quiniquisette Ave.
Yeah.
As you go past Willow Bend, there's 2 crosswalks. One has dual caution lights and one does not, but the paint is virtually gone at both crosswalks.
Okay.
You know, we're not doing the lights or anything like that. That's what we're doing, the crosswalks. The scope is the crosswalks and a berm in that area, but I have to get out there and see what length it is to cost it out.
Okay. Another item, quick item. Oh, Ann, can you talk about our IMU meeting with Falmouth and Sandwich?
Well, I think we just had some conversations about really the desirability of an IMU, right? And I would say that the reaction was sort of like, oh, might be a good thing, but not quite sure about going forward until we read the newspapers, and then there was something much more concrete in the Mashpee Enterprise this week than we heard coming out of the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Can I explain that?
It was kind of like the meeting we had with Barnstable and Sandwich. Falmouth, I think the only thing that came out of the meeting was an acceptance of the percentages of the nitrogen that each community is responsible for. And I had originally, looking at the sub-embayment loads, suggested that it was going to be about 40%, 39 to 40% for Mashpee. The agreement turned out to be 44, which is fine. But that was about the only thing we agreed on. We pushed for asking them to enter into getting a watershed permit, which would kind of cast some of this in concrete with timeframes, and they were not willing. Falmouth is not willing to do that. So what we achieved was basically an acceptance of the load. And I think that if we do 2E in its entirety, we will have met our allocation. Falmouth, I think it's going to be difficult. They have 14 estuaries, and they're moving from west to east. So Wacoit's going to be the last area they address.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So I can speak to this if you want.
Okay, yeah.
Among the things that you found out, the paperwork, there's a document that basically lays out what we've called the division of labor between the sewer commission and the town engineer, and another part of the document speaks to the town manager. But as you'll recall, back when we had a change of leadership in the sewer commission, and we also had the introduction of our new engineer, some of us were asking for some better clarification of the roles and responsibilities. And over the last few months, with some experience working together and some practical experience on the ground, and a look at the statutory language for the sewer commission, we came up with kind of a distribution of the responsibilities and roles for the sewer commission and the town engineer, with the participation of the town manager and the assistant town manager, the town engineer, Mike, Ann, and Andrew Gottlieb. So I think this is a document that we can look to for providing some guidance about where responsibility resides, with a little more clarity than we had a few months ago.
And in terms of one other item not reasonably anticipated, the contract. Chris, I can't even remember what the contract was for.
The
one-
OPM.
Oh, the OPM, the contract for the OPM. We had suggested that they add wording that would make the sewer commission a client rather than just the town manager. And Pat Costello suggested that there were legal reasons for why it should remain just the town manager, which is fine.
Yep.
And there was another piece where we wanted to add wording that made it clear that work on both the plant and the collection system could be conducted during the summer as long as we had the permission of the select board.
Just to add on to that, Mike, the permission of the select board when work is being done in roadways.
Yes,
So you
Yeah.
can still work on the plant in the summer.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Next meeting, February 10th, I believe. So if you have any agenda items, send them to me. Unless anybody has anything else they'd like to discuss. Glenn, do you have anything you want to talk about with us?
We a number of us watched your meeting the other night. That was pretty interesting. With the select board.
Yeah, we've been tasked with quite the deal now to change our whole Title V applications in town, and so we're obviously going to be speaking a lot more going forward.
Right.
Something that you provided the maps for phases 1 and 2, just, is there going to be a map to show 3, 4, and 5? Or is it going to be left at phase 1 and 2 now, and then basically everyone else outside of phases 1 and 2? Because we're looking to make decisions kind of long-term, what we do with cesspools, what we do with alternative systems in other parts of the town. Phases 1 and 2 are marching forward, and so we're hoping that that occurs and that those areas get the sewering that they need, and then how do we address the septics for the next 10, 15, 20 years in those areas outside of phase 1 and 2. And that we're leaning towards to removing as much nitrogen as possible, where Title V and cesspools obviously don't do that very well.
Exactly.
And so we're going to be changing our whole stance on how we approach that. So I guess that's how we're going to have to move forward now. So,
Yeah.
I don't think we can give you an answer, because I think if we do manage to get phase 2 moving the way we'd like to, this has to be a decision amongst the higher-ups, because we will have removed all of the nitrogen in Pompanesett, for example, and Wacoit, that we're compelled to remove.
yeah,
So I don't know. I don't think anybody's really thought about going beyond phase 2, because phase 2 has become so big
right,
that it incorporates parts of 3, 4, and 5.
right.
The
That's
original.
why I was just kind of wondering how that shifted the original wastewater plan to what was remaining in the plan, or if, and Andy Gottlieb spoke to it. He just basically said that those areas that were 3, 4, and 5 aren't really going to be determined until we see what the efficiency of the shellfish, because much of that is based upon, in the plan, on how well the shellfish remove nitrogen. And if that's what we're left with, that's fine. We just want to make sure that we're basing our decisions, our longer-term decisions, on the right things moving forward in the plan.
Yeah, I think we agree with that, and certainly want to look beyond phase 2 toward having ways to reduce nitrogen throughout the town, whatever happens with 3, 4, and 5. So at this juncture, I think sitting here today, you've heard how big this project is at the moment,
Right.
and with dimensions that we haven't really incorporated, like the sludge and so forth. So we have a lot to process ourselves, but we really want to collaborate with you on developing these long-term views of how to work with homeowners in these areas that won't see anything for a while, if at
Right.
all.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
When's your next meeting, Glenn?
I'm sorry?
When's your next meeting?
Our next meeting is February 3rd,
Okay.
the first and third Thursday of each month.
And what's the meeting on the 17th?
Yes, the second meeting is the 17th, yeah.
The second meeting with the select board?
There was
The
some,
first Thursday is the 3rd,
Okay, I thought there was a meeting scheduled for the 17th.
and the third Thursday is the 17th.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
is that a special meeting of some kind, or, no?
No, on the 17th, we have a couple of hearings that we have to do, but no, those are regularly scheduled
Okay.
board meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also heard at that meeting, the select board meeting with you folks, a willingness on the part of the selectmen to move away from Title V systems in Mashpee in general, which is pretty dramatic change in a positive direction.
Yeah, it is a huge change.
Yeah.
And it's, we're hoping to have a couple of working sessions with a couple of the selectmen, and I guess we're due to go back to the selectmen at the end of February, and I think you folks will be invited to that one as well, I think.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was
then,
thinking.
We'll take it from there. But it's going to be a pretty large framework kind of restructuring of how we approach septic systems.
Right.
And it's going to be a kind of a huge ordeal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're with you.
All right.
Well,
I
yeah,
appreciate that.
Sounds like there's a good consensus building that that's the direction to take,
Mm-hmm.
which will be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Any other issues? Anybody? Chris?
You'll get an email when you get back, but Evan Lair, our town planner, is going through and updating the master plan. It hasn't been updated in over 20 years. And he wanted he's emailed you a request to be put on the agenda February 10th.
Okay.
Sure.
And he's going to have the people that are doing the master plan just come in and have whatever questions they have on sewer, what our plans are for the future, that type of thing, so they can incorporate some of it into the master plan.
This is
All
the
right.
long-term comprehensive plan that has not been updated since 1998.
Really?
Really. So there's a lot of work to do.
Chris, do you have any idea what you're shooting for next week in terms of meeting with EP and GHD?
Well, I thought if there's any comments on any of this stuff from any of the commission members, if we could receive them by Tuesday morning, before 10, put for a deadline. If there isn't, we'll schedule anything with either one after that.
Okay,
So Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe,
excellent.
so I can check the availability. And of when they can meet, I'll set something up. And I can forward them this document to give them a heads up, or when I could even do it by phone and say, this is what we're gonna do. And we'll hand you the scope when we see you.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. Time for a vote on a motion to
I
adjourn.
have a question.
Oh, Meredith.
Yeah, I just have, short thing. Mike, I never did get a copy of the map and the timetable for phases 1 and 2, and I didn't get a copy of Chris's material that he presented today, so I can get some feedback on it as well.
Okay.
I'll email it to you right now, Meredith.
Chris is going to...
Okay, and then one general question. We've been talking about nitrogen loading, but we haven't in taking care of that, but no one has talked about phosphorus. Is that a different conversation?
No, that's one of the reasons we want a sewer, because sewering's the only method available now to remove
That's gonna address that, yeah.
phosphorus.
Okay.
Yeah,
I knew that, but there hadn't been any talk about it. I mean, really.
okay.
Well, we tend to focus on nitrogen because that was sort of the genesis of this whole project.
I know that.
Yeah.
I know that. But then when we went to the idea of making sure that the fresh water was going to be included in the sewering, that was the phosphorus issue was driving that one.
Yes, you're right. We got to keep that in mind at all times. I don't know how to send you a copy. The only copies of the map with the street-based map with timeframes are hard copies.
Oh,
Chris, is it possible for me to take that 11 by 17 map and turn it into something I can email to people?
Yeah, I have it.
you can just take a photograph of it.
I have a PDF of it.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Chris can send it to you.
Chris will send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
All righty.
Yeah, I don't know if it has
All right.
timeframes on it, but wasn't there one in an email that had timeframes?
Hey, Deb?
Good afternoon. My apologies for interrupting you. I closed the wall.
Okay, we're almost done. We're almost done.
But wasn't there one, either you or Andy had in an email, and it was really rough. It just said 2024.
Right.
But I can send it, the Phase 2A through 2E plan in PDF. I'll send it along with the documents from today.
Okay. It was a street,
Okay.
it was a street-based map.
Okay.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Okay.
Well, it may be,
I'll give you a copy, Chris, I think.
I can
Anyway.
I can only scan black and white here.
Okay.
Well, maybe I did upstairs. This one's only black and white.
this is
We'll get it to
this
you.
one, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
We'll get it to you, Meredith.
thank you. And is the discussion on the website been tabled?
Oh, my goodness.
Well, we didn't have it today.
No, we didn't discuss it, but it's.
We
we'll hold
didn't,
it next meeting.
we didn't talk about it today because we've run
All
so
right,
long.
so table it full.
Okay, next week, next meeting.
Okay.
Just one other comment for you. Meredith, the draft that Mike put together on the comprehensive watershed plan includes the discussion of phosphorus. So it is
Yeah.
it's included in there as one of the two nutrients. So I think that's
Okay.
something that we're looking at. So keep that one in mind. As I hold up, you can see it, right? Never mind.
Always putting walls up.
So,
Okay, I did see it in there, yes.
okay,
That's one that has phosphorus listed on it, so it is
Yeah.
included in our discussion.
okay.
Great.
And I'll
Okay.
make sure we get the website on the next agenda.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody, for working on the website, by the way. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
There's